Okay, so let's try this essay officially again. If you don't have any other model for writing an essay, here's a foundational model you can use. Most of you have probably internalized some version of this in the past, but I want to give you an alternate way of looking at it so that you can see what writing is really supposed to be connected to. Um, because a lot of times when we write an essay, we write with the audience of one in mind. We're writing for the teacher. Sometimes we write with less purpose or less meaningfulness because we think the teacher's got a reading graded anyways, so let them do their job. I'll just write whatever comes to mind. So when we think about the essay, when it comes to academic writing, it's usually more humanities based. It's usually more persuasive writing based. This model I'm going to give you, but if you're not given any other model and the teacher hasn't named a genre specifically, like case study, lab report, IMRD format, ethnography, or something like that, you can use this model as a way to work through it. It should be noted the model I'm giving you isn't based on a specific number of paragraphs. It's about kind of sections or chunks of an essay. You can use it for 2-page papers or 30-page papers. I used a version of it for a 60-page thesis. So that's okay. And sometimes people will think of models like the 5-paragraph essay or the 3-prong thesis statement model. These aren't necessarily wrong, but they have limitations if we don't contextualize them. So don't default what I'm saying to a 5-paragraph model. I'm not a big fan of 5-paragraph models unless you're writing a 2 to 3-page paper. Then it might actually fit. Anything longer than 3 pages and your paragraphs get so long that they're unwieldy and unmanageable, and you shouldn't do it. You need to let your paragraphs be governed by the content or the meaningful moments of your essay. But that's getting ahead of myself. As a place to start, when we think about introductions, what goes in an introduction? Trying to get comfortable here. Tell me. Think about it for 30 seconds. Not 30 seconds. I'm not giving you 30 seconds. What are the main pieces of an introduction? First, there's usually a hook. There's usually a moment where you provide meaningful background information, and there's usually a final point or a thesis statement. This is where we establish our purpose, even if it's not a persuasive purpose. We usually have some sort of guiding statement or thesis statement in that introductory paragraph or introduction section, whatever it is. In the traditional humanity-based model, it's usually a paragraph, maybe 2. The thesis is usually, according to norm, social norm, it usually ends at the bottom of the first paragraph or beginning of the second. The longer the essay, the further that might extend. If you're writing a 20-page essay, your introduction is going to be longer. That being said, I like to think of this, however, in connection to another context where introductions happen. So take a moment. When else are you introducing someone or something? Maybe when you're introducing yourself. Where in life? Okay, so maybe it's when you're trying to make a new friend. Maybe it's when you see someone you're like, hey, they seem like they'd be fun to hang out with. Maybe I should get their number, something like that. You do introductions in the same way. I've never seen this person, but I've heard they're kind of cool, so maybe I want to make a new friend, or whatever. So that first line is kind of like that. Instead of a hook or attention grabber in an academic essay, I like to call it the my version pickup line, small talk, and getting the digits. Don't judge. So as a starting point, when you are coming up with a pickup line, these are things like, did it hurt? What? When you fell from heaven. Are you tired? Why? Because you've been running through my mind all day. Things like that. These are terrible things to start an essay with. They're also terrible things to introduce yourself with. These are the equivalent of cliches. But we usually have something that we try and get someone's attention with, whether so that we can kind of, as an icebreaker, as a way to draw them in and show them that we're not boring, that we're kind of interesting. And so if you're really good at making friends and building relationships, transfer that into the academic writing context. If you're really good at academic writing and introductory paragraphs, transfer that into your personal life and make more friends that way. Use the same principles. These are overlapping genres. So we start with something interesting, pick up line, hook, attention grabber. Then in that relational situation when I'm coming up to a new person, The next step is I need to provide necessary background information. Sometimes this is called small talk. This is where you find out information like, does the person have a job? What is that job? How do they have kids? Some people care about that. Are they married? A lot of people seem to care about that. That necessary background information based on whatever your goal is. So if your relational goal is to have a romantic relationship, that seems like a kind of important one for some people. That being said, ultimately, whatever your purpose is will determine what necessary background information similarly in an essay or a conversation needs to be there. So you don't just give them everything about you. You don't tell them in a small talk situation when you're first meeting someone, you don't tell them your entire life story. You often don't, if it's a romantic thing, don't mention past relationships. Like that doesn't usually go over well. So if you can be a meaningful and effective writer, it actually makes you better when it comes to building relationships and friendships. Cool, huh? Exciting. I care about teaching you a whole person, not just a writer. Isn't that fun? All right. So that's just the introduction. Ultimately, then your thesis statement is the equivalent to when you actually state your purpose in a relational situation where you met someone new. Hey, you want to go for pizza? Hey, can I get your number? Hey, whatever that is. But it's when we go into the academic environment, we know we're dealing with a more complex situation. So often our thesis statements, they're to the point, they're straightforward, but sometimes they're complex too. In the same way, in an everyday life situation, if you're looking for a more meaningful relationship, that initial introduction might end with something a bit more meaningful. It may not be, I want to have 5 kids and a white picket fence and 2.7 dogs with you. That might be awkward, but you have some sort of more complex purpose embedded. For that, you might check out a resource I have on the 6 to 7 point thesis statement for building deeper analytical complex statements. But I'm going to do a separate video just on the thesis statement. So this is just the kind of starter kit. Again, foundational model, not basic, but foundational. There's a difference. With that, so our introduction is just, it parallels trying to get to know someone. We have our attention grabber, that's our pickup line. We have our small talk, that's when we're providing necessary and important background information, not just random facts, intentionally targeted facts to accomplish our purpose, and to make sure we have the necessary information going forward. And ultimately, our thesis statement is when we state our main purpose, whether that's getting a number, asking for pizza, or connecting, establishing a next step beyond just, hey, we had a good time talking and having small talk, chit chat kind of stuff. So in the foundational, not basic, in the foundational model of an essay, if you don't have any other model, that introduction is establishing a relationship with your reader. And it's important to see it that way because when you establish a relationship with your reader, you're telling them, I want to have meaningful experiences with you, whatever that is. And as we go into the rest of this essay, I'm going to keep using this metaphor of the relationship model, whether it's a friendship or romantic or whatever. I'm going to keep using this metaphor because it helps us understand that writing is supposed to be communication and meaningful experiences through words with other people. Okay, I'm going to stop this because this is the introduction. So we'll call this part 1 of the foundational model of an essay.